Welcome to Helping You Thrive, a Banterra podcast that offers inspiration and information to help individuals, businesses, and communities to thrive. I'm Jennifer Spence, Director of Marketing for Banterra Bank.
And I'm Ben Kraft, Commercial Officer for Banterra Bank and also a co-host. We had a great interview today with Martin Parsons and Allison Hasler to talk about Freedom Sings, the event in Marion. Just very interesting story, very interesting concept of an event, and the stories they shared today were touching and so good to listen to. Wow, this was a great one.
Yeah. A warning: this is going to be a heartwarming one. You might want to get your Kleenex out and to get handy. But it really is inspiring, and I so appreciate their service and the songwriters that can really bring their story to life. So, hope you enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Today, we are so excited to talk about one of our favorite events, Freedom Sings, that Banterra sponsors. And I'm going to let our guests talk about that later, but I will summarize it by saying it is veterans sharing their experience in the beautiful method of song through songwriters. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's a really neat event, and we're really excited to talk to you guys today. We want to welcome Martin Parsons and Allison Hasler. Very excited to talk to you guys today, but first, before we get into the Freedom Sings event, maybe we can get to your backgrounds a little bit. Martin, Legal Advocacy Headquarters. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I have a small legal practice in Carterville. I help small businesses and nonprofits get set up and stay legal. I also teach part-time at the law school, helping young aspiring lawyers how to set up and run their law practice.
The SIU.
At SIU, yes. SIU Simmons.
Southern Illinois University.
And in addition to that, a veteran, right?
Yes.
You were in active duty with the Marines, National Guard. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I did 22 years in the Guard, 4 years in the Marine Corps, and I retired, and then I went to law school.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And Allison, welcome. We have you, Southern Illinois Vacation Rentals, and also a veteran. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I spent about 11 years in the public health field. That was my background. My master's degree is in that. But I slowly shifted from government administration to a big shift into entrepreneurship. And so I run a property management company for short-term and mid-term rentals, so all furnished rentals in Southern Illinois, and a veteran. And Martin just happens to be my attorney as well.
This podcast is very familiar to you. You were the original co-host of Small Town Big Business. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So when I was at the city of Marion, we had decided to start a podcast about small town big business. So really looking at our small business owners and really shedding light on what it is like to thrive and what benefits there are to having a business in smaller towns like Marion. And we got together with Ethos. So my co-host, Russell Williams, is still operating. The sound producer, Luke O'Neill, is still a big part of that. So I'm the only one that left. It just got a little bit too crazy as my business was getting started and growing. But man, I still listen to it to this day. I just listened to it the other day about Downtown Fizz and how she got started.
That was a great one.
Yeah, that was the most recent.
Years old. Yeah, we could probably have a whole podcast on those details. But it is a great podcast. So I welcome our listeners to listen to that. So you left because your business was thriving with Southern Illinois Vacation Rentals. So talk about that.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting story, and I don't usually start here, but in 2015, my husband sold his business, American Shoreline, and when he did, I feel like it was kind of like a sabbatical for him, and he really wasn't sure what the next step was, so he bought a 50-foot motor yacht to charter on Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley. And so we did that for 3 seasons. We absolutely loved sharing something that we loved, which is the love of the water and being on lakes and rivers and things like that, and being able to share that with people. So that was our introduction into the hospitality industry. We absolutely loved it, but we had very small children at the time. And of course, with something like that, you're going to be every weekend, every holiday during the summer months is going to be not yours anymore. You're working, right? So we did it for a few years and decided that we could share experiences we love a lot closer to home and make this a lot easier for us. So we decided to build some micro cabins on the back 5 acres of our homestead, and we got that kind of to a well-oiled machine on the back end. And really it wasn't by accident, honestly, that I wanted to start adding properties to help manage so that we could kind of move forward with some bigger plans on that back 5 acres. That kind of took a huge turn and it really exploded. And so our little cabins kind of took a back seat, and then the property management company just doubled in size every year. So we're in year 5 now. We are heading into 50 properties that are managed.
Amazing.
Some that we own, but mainly manage. So it's taken a huge turn that I never would have expected. But the passion is there to share experiences of Southern Illinois.
Absolutely.
And
People
we love
should
it.
visit Southern Illinois, and I'm so glad that you have these offerings. So
Yeah.
tell us about your military service.
Right. So I am from a small farm community in central Illinois called Newton, and it's a little east of Effingham, and most of the options are pretty limited for females. So if you're a female that wanted to go to National Guard, you would either go all the way to Springfield, which was a pretty good trek, or you would go to Paris, Illinois, which was a transportation company. So I chose that one. It was a very easy decision for me. My brother was also in the military. He had served in active duty Army, and then he was in the National Guard. He's still to this day in the National Guard. But he was a mechanic essentially in the National Guard and said, Paris, you can drive trucks if you want to drive trucks. And so that's what I did. So I joined when I was 17. That was pre 9/11.
Yeah.
So, and the frontal cortex was not quite developed of a teenager. Not,
Had no idea what was
war
ahead of
was
you.
not
Yeah.
even. That was the furthest thing from anybody's mind.
Sure.
Not just teenagers that were signing up for the National Guard. But when I was in my training in Fort Bliss, Texas, that's when 9/11 happened. Yeah. And honestly, I don't think the world knew what was going to happen afterwards. I didn't know if I was going to get to even come home after that.
Yeah.
We were eventually able to come home. And about a year and a half later is when we deployed. So we were considered the second wave of ground troops in Iraq at the beginning of the war.
I'm curious, you mentioned your brother also in the
Yeah.
military, right? Was that your motivation for wanting to join the military, or what else went into that?
Yeah,
Was
so
it in your family, or what else?
yeah, we were a proud military family. My father was a CB, so a Navy CB. My grandfather was in the Army during peacetime. He was stationed in Alaska. My brother, like I said, was already in the National Guard, and so we deployed together, my brother and I, and which is a double-edged sword, right? It's great to have somebody there, but then it's also somebody that you love dearly that you're worried about.
Sure.
Those were a lot of decision-making factors. There was also a lot of decisions based on, being able to pay for college and delaying college for a semester since I didn't quite know what I wanted to get into. Those very simple decisions. Like I said, I was 17 when I joined, so there wasn't, I was patriotic, but at the same time, that wasn't really the driving force. That came afterwards and during the experience.
Do you want to share a little bit about your experience in the military, Martin, and maybe what motivated you to join the military as well?
Sure. I have a military family. My dad served during Vietnam, didn't have to go, fortunately. But my reason for joining wasn't really patriotic. It was more economic. People in my small town in Hoopeston, either you worked in the factory or you went to college. And my parents didn't go to college. No one talked to me about going to college. And the recruiter came and knocked on the door, asked me if I wanted to join, and I didn't really have any better options. So it sounded like
not?
a thing to do. Why
Yeah.
not? Sounded like a pretty good deal.
Of course.
So I joined, did 4 years in the Marine Corps. It was very formative to me. Then I got out. There wasn't a Marine Reserve unit close, and I wanted to stay connected, so I joined the National Guard. And as Allison talked about, that was way pre 9/11 at that point. But it was 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer, and you got great educational benefits. And then 9/11 happened, and it all changed.
Yeah.
And it started to become real training, and they started to deploy a lot more National Guard troops. than they even sometimes active duty folks. And I was there in Iraq a little bit. I think we overlapped just a little bit in the time that we were there.
Part of your experience and who you are now.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and that brings us to Freedom Sings, the event we're here to talk about today. So, if you could, can you just introduce the event and tell us all about it? And
I'm interested to know about your pitch to the city of Marion. too,
Yeah,
'cause I know that they
sure.
really, Mayor Mike Absher and his team really embraced it also. So
Yeah, they did. So I learned about it from a former law student of mine. I used to work full-time at the university, ran a clinic. Ryan Taylor, he knew about the organization, had gone through it, had his song written, and he continued to contribute. So he told me about it. He said, you should have your song written. And so I went through the program in 2023. They have a virtual online program once a week, had my song written. And then after it was done, I learned that they do retreats. They come to your town, and they had just done one in Shiloh the year before. And I think, gosh, what a perfect location for us to do one here with everything that was going on. So we were at an event in the square, kind of bumped into some people, and Jennifer Olson, and pitched her about the opportunity of pairing the songwriters and veterans to write their story. And she thought that might be interesting. At that time, they were wanting to really grow Marion's support of veterans and piggyback on what Veterans on Parade had done. I think last year was 20 years, and really just make that weekend really big for veterans. So it was a really good fit. It was good timing, as a lot of things. We got them at a point when they were wanting to really highlight veterans.
yeah, their Veterans Parade is great. Plus, they have the VA hospital here, and so they do
Yeah.
a lot. And I mean, from Banterra's standpoint, it was a first-time event. But I mean, first of all, you were so professional on just asking about the sponsorship and all those kind of things. But there's multiple reasons why we jumped on board. We love to support veteran events. I mean, today in Marion is the Veterans Honor Flight. We'll have the largest group of volunteers there probably. We do things for disabled veteran and all kinds of things. But I just really love, too, that so many events were in, I mean, I know this is probably a personal preference, but in revitalized downtown spaces here. And they've done such a good job in Marion on that. So it was just something that we really needed to jump into. And then I am from Southern Illinois, but lived in Nashville for 20 years. And I had the opportunity to do marketing for the Grand Ole Opry and Ryman and all those kind of things, and had experiences at Bluebird Cafe and all that stuff. And so when you said Nashville songwriters to me, plus veterans, plus the downtown, I mean, you like spoke to our company and me personally. So I was like, what do you want?
A lot of connections
So
there,
it's great.
for sure. A lot of connections. I love the concept, too. So we're talking about bona fide, professional Nashville songwriters, a lot of whom have had big hits with very famous folks. And so we're pairing those songwriters, right, with a group of veterans to learn their stories and eventually come up with a song to tell their stories, right? Can you tell us about that concept?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, they are well-known national songwriters. Don Goodman, one of the founders, to kind of a quick rundown of all the folks who were here last year. He wrote Angels Among Us for Alabama, Old Red for originally George Jones. Blake Shelton really made it big. Lee Greenwood, Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn. The other songwriter, Steve Dean, his big song was Watching You with Rodney Adkins, among many others for Alabama, Oak Ridge Boys, George Strait, Reba McEntire.
Wow.
Irene Kelley's written things for Alan Jackson, Trish Yearwood, Loretta Lynn, Little Big Town, which was Allison's songwriter. Bobby Tomerlin, One More Day with Diamond Rio, which really peaked about the time of 9/11, helped them out. Willie Nelson and Barbara Streisand just released one of his songs, I Want It to Be You. Blake Shelton, Faye Field, Josh Turner, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I mean, these are...
Who haven't they written songs for?
Yeah, these are well-known professional songwriters who, in talking to them, Don Goodman, who's in his 80s, says that, of all the things he's done, people he's met, this is the most fulfilling work he's ever done, and he just loves it.
So I want to talk about last year's the first night event. It's a multi events in one.
Okay.
So Thursday, the Market Street Music Conservatory. Ben and I were able to go to that, and just for the listeners. You introduced what the event was, the mayor spoke, then you had songwriters there that performed some songs maybe they've done in the past, but then each table, round table, we had dinner and everything. There was a veteran sitting at each table, and that veteran was participating in the event, and they were sharing their story, and the songwriter was going to be writing a song later for that, correct?
Yeah.
And Allison, you were one of the veterans there, and you shared your story. And I get chills just thinking about it. Would you mind telling us about that experience of participating in the event and your story?
Okay, I want to back up a little bit before telling my story. When Martin pitched me the idea, and I understand that I was probably low-hanging fruit because Martin and I already knew each other, and he probably already knew that I was a yes person anyway. So, but even the concept, it's not an easy elevator pitch, right? Like when you're explaining what is going to take place, and not just logistically, but the emotional value that it has, not just to you personally as a veteran, but then to all the other people around, it is a really hard explanation, I think. Martin did a really great job to articulate what it was, how he experienced it, and how he wanted to bring it to Southern Illinois. So I said yes, and at first it was a little bit reluctant, a reluctant yes, and we can kind of go back to that if we have time. But I think a lot of veterans, especially regardless of what your experience is, you have that, I don't know if I have a story to tell that's worthy of a song, right? So that was my first response internally was, yeah, I'm happy to help you out, but I don't know if I have anything worthy of that. So
Which is every veteran's response.
it is, and that's what I'm like. If we have time to go into that, I have whole.
Well, that amazes me too, because
Tale.
once you tell your story, it's so obvious to me that it should be a song. It's incredible.
Yes, it was an absolutely beautiful song that she told me, and what Martin I don't think could explain to anybody, any veteran that he's trying to recruit is not only is it slightly difficult to go through and have a songwriter talk to you about your story and really sharing your story and what you want to share, right? And that is a little bit difficult. But then the therapeutic experience of hearing it afterwards is like, whew, it was so amazing. And you could tell anybody how therapeutic it is. And I don't think you could ever know truly unless you experience it yourself. So I'm a huge advocate for any veteran at all to be able to be part of this if they can. When you were there at the dinner on Thursday night, it just happened to be September 5th. And that September 5th of 2024 marked 20 years to the date that I lost one of my friends. Now, in total, we lost 5 people when I was deployed out of our unit of 168. The first one being the first full day in our new home, which was Log Base Sites, Iraq. But during that time, we had lost 2 already, and by September, mortar attacks were regular. I think our statistics were average once every 3rd day or once every 3 days. Excuse me. So it wasn't uncommon to have mortar attacks. I went to dinner with Shauna and 4 or 5 other people from my platoon. We were sitting there having dinner, normal, everyday occurrence. I waited on another friend because she is a talker, and so I was waiting on her to finish her conversation with somebody else so that we could go back to our barracks for our evening meetings. And we heard the sirens. We did our regular duck and cover. It was not anything in particular. They sounded close, but it wasn't anything really out of the ordinary for us. Once we had the all clear, we went out into the nearest bunkers, and we found out that our barracks, our unit's barracks, were hit. So Bobby and I, female Bobby, and I, both, the one that I was waiting on, we're both combat lifesavers, which is essentially EMTBs, EMT basics. And so we rushed over, got our supplies, and started treating and triaging everybody that had been hit. Not only was it the entire group that I had went with that had been hit, Shauna I saw her lying on the ground. There were a couple of others already pulled up and then aside to some trucks, and a person that my brother was sitting by next to the smoking section was also hit and was also one of our casualties that day. And my brother was one of the walking wounded. He wanted to refuse treatment. He was not allowed. He had to go. But he was sitting right next to Charlie Lamb, who did lose his life. And, for a really, really long time, I had the most tremendous amount of survivor's guilt over that. Shauna was quite a bit older than a lot of us girls. A lot of us were in our younger 20s. She was in her upper 20s, so still very young in the big scheme of things. But she was more of like that overbearing big sister. She laughed loud, she yelled at people loud, and she loved really well with her whole heart. And being at that point, a 21-year-old that was just in college, I didn't know how to do that really well. And I just felt like it should have been me and not her because she was more worthy. And there's so many people that go through that, and so many people from my unit that I know experienced that had those close calls or were in the truck when an IED happened and somebody else had lost their lives. And so I told this story, and I told, as I was being interviewed by Irene Kelley, and I explained that my
and
brother...
Irene's the songwriter.
Yes, Irene's the songwriter. I explained that my brother was one of the walking wounded, and she stopped me and she goes, she's like, is it okay if I use that terminology? Like, that's not offensive, right? And I'm like, no, it's not offensive. I don't know how you would use it, but
you're the songwriter, so
sure. Like, go for it. And the way that she used it was so beautiful and so metaphoric to how there are so many that are walking wounded that you may not see. You may not see their wounds, but the wounds are still there.
Yeah.
And so it was a very fitting,
so appropriate.
Experience, and for it to be at that time and be able to honor Shauna in such a wonderful way. It was just such a beautiful experience, and there was absolutely, I know it may have been a coincidence that you asked me to be part of that, but I guarantee it was meant to be, and I just couldn't. I couldn't have asked for a better experience.
See, now every one of our listeners is saying, "Oh yeah, that's an amazing story," and you're going to get to hear the song. We're going to play the song for you in our edited version of the podcast.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you for sharing your story with me. What an honor. We wrote a song called "Walk On." Turned 17, joined the National Guard, grew up on a real fast track. Turned 21 on a Kuwait convoy, headed for Iraq. We were 168 when the first mortar hit, and one good soldier down. How could I know then what I know now? Some called us walking wounded, some scars you never see. We toured a foreign desert in 5 tons in Humvees. A small town, just 8,000, with open arms welcomed us home. Help the walking wounded walk on. I'd almost forgotten Illinois' beauty till I got a picture from home. surrounded by sand. There at that moment, I could almost smell the corn. The bombs started flying, we were back on alert, vowed to keep each other alive, and never to forget the fallen fight. Some call us walking wounded, some scars you never see, but life had different plans, at least they did for me. Thank God for a loving husband with open arms to welcome me home. Help the walking wounded walk on, walk on, walk on.
I knew, I think, about your brother, but I also, the part that moved me too, that so could have been you. You took you were listening to your friend that was talking too long or whatever, and it could have been, just, you never know, do we? Yeah. So.
Well, and thank you for sharing that. I know it's probably difficult to talk about, and that speaks to your point earlier about when Martin pitched this idea to you. It's like, okay, this is going to be a little bit out of my comfort zone. So, some other veterans might not want to dig up the past, or they're not comfortable speaking about their experiences, or like to your point too, they might not think they have a worthwhile story to tell for whatever reason. But in going through this process, meeting with a songwriter, talking about the story, working through that, you mentioned it's therapeutic in a way. So in the end, it sounds like you're really happy that you went through that experience and glad you did it, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's so funny because Martin had just mentioned to me that there was a clip, and I'm like, I don't know what clip you're talking about. And there was a professional grade clips of that night, and he actually sent it to one of my old battle buddies before sending it to me, and he had reached out. He had a very similar experience. Well, we all had very different experiences, I should say, but he was actually in one of the trucks that an IED hit, and he survived with, minimal injuries in the big scheme of things. There was a lot of major injuries, and then they also had one that died in that truck. And he shared it with my battle buddy, who is also an attorney, and is how you guys knew each other. And he had messaged me the next morning, and he's like, I just watched this clip, and he had just a paragraph of things to say about how it affected him. And I'm like, okay, for one, I haven't seen the clip. But if you ever have the chance, please go through this because it is so worth it. And I think he had forwarded it on to a couple of other people, and I said, I feel reluctant to share it. I probably will closer to recruitment time for the next Freedom Sings, but I don't want it to be, this isn't about me. This is about veterans telling their stories and really wanting veterans to be able to tell their stories. And it doesn't have to be traumatic events that happened. It can be during peacetime. It can be non-deployment experiences. It can be anything because they all
story,
have values. Yes, we all have stories.
So, Martin, tell us the stories that moved you and just share your passion for it. You're the one that leads this event. So,
well, one of the things I wanted to piggyback on what Allison talked about is, we have 4 veterans that we work with. And originally you think, well, that's just 4 veterans that you're helping. And it's not an inexpensive event to put on. Again, without the city, we probably wouldn't be able to in Banterra. But it's not just 4 veterans. It's their battle buddies who hear that story later, and it's their song, too, because her song was about them, which you'll hear it later. And so that's one of the really impactful things is it just ripples. That story touches so many people and can also educate civilians, if you will, who don't necessarily understand, especially the wounds that they can't see in us. So that's where her story is so powerful because it speaks to that. So in addition to touching other veterans and educating is why it's just so important. to do.
Yeah, and at that event, we got to hear your story. We got to hear the other veterans' stories there. And in addition to that, we got to hear the songwriters actually perform. They're not just songwriters; these are professional performers too.
Yeah, as well.
And I'd say at that event, I think I laughed, I cried, I was in awe. It was just I didn't know really what to expect, but it was such a I don't even know what the word is to describe it. It was an amazing event to be a part
Yeah.
of. To
So
hear all
Mark-
those stories. Yeah, go ahead.
Tell us about that story that you've told me that moved you the most at that event is really very worth
Yeah,
sharing.
it really is. And one of the things Allison said too was, it wasn't a coincidence how this all came together and the veterans that were a part of it and the reason that they were and just how it came together. And one more incident that happened that as much planning as that we do, you can't plan for things like this. So one of the veterans that was a part of this, his name's Art Fager. He's a guy I actually served with in the Guard. We were both active duty in those infantry battalions where it was only guys. But we served at a little different times, different units. But I knew him because he was full-time. So when we were looking for veterans, I knew his story about losing one of his soldiers in Iraq. So I knew he had a story. He has a bracelet. He posts every year about it. So I approached him. He also reluctantly agreed to do it. He said, I'm not going to tell my story. I'm going to tell his story. So I came to Veterans on Parade the morning of the concert. After Art had done his song, on Friday is when the veterans meet with the songwriters and have their song written. Then they perform it the next day. I mean, they do this in a day. So I'd gone to Veterans on Parade to see what the stage looked like, to get a feel for things, to do any loose ends, to talk to Josh. And I was standing around watching it, really needed to leave because I had too many things to do, but I just didn't. I don't know why I didn't, but I felt compelled just to stay. And they were doing the Gold Star Mothers, which they honor every year, Gold Star families. And they mentioned the mother of this soldier. And the name sounded familiar. So I took out my phone and I went to Art's stuff, and I found that this Gold Star mother was the mother of the soldier that Art lost in Iraq. So I waited around some more to talk to her afterwards, asked her if she knew about the event, and she didn't, and whether she would be there. And she was reluctant to come if it was going to make Art uncomfortable. So I called Art, and he's like, gosh, I would love her to be there. And so she was. She was at the concert, and
Wow.
Getting a little choked up about it now. I mean, there was not a dry eye in the house when they sang that song, and then the mayor brought her up to the stage.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just powerful, and we could never plan that.
Right.
It was just one of the amazing things that.
I know at our table, there was a veteran that was a nurse in Vietnam, Patty, that touched us both. And I had just read Kristen Hanna's book, The Women, which was eye-opening to me about Vietnam and experience, and it was about a Vietnam nurse. And sort of like your story, young, I think I'll join, who had no idea what was, whatever. But I mentioned that book to her, and she's like, yeah, I haven't read it because I lived it, But we've shared, like, she still doesn't think she's worthy because she went on the front line. But my gosh, the stories of being a nurse or doctor
I know.
during that Vietnam War was amazing.
Yeah, Patty is a new friend of mine because we were brought together because of this, and she is the most wonderful person in the world. And you probably wouldn't know that she was a Vietnam veteran unless you were seeing her in, the veteran activities that she does. But she is amazing. And one of the things that struck a chord with me is that when she introduced herself at first, she said, I'm Patty, I'm Vietnam veteran. I was a nurse behind the scenes. And I'm like, Patty, there is no reason to downgrade anything or devalue in any way your service. I mean, you may not have been on front lines, but as a nurse, you are right there. And I know that maybe I wouldn't call it imposter syndrome, but I know that feeling so well that she explained and how she somewhat devalued her military service, because I think there's so many of us, so many veterans that kind of downplay our involvement or downplay our role of, whether it's because we served during peacetime or, I was just a truck driver, I wasn't an infantryman, those sort of things that we say to ourselves. And, I have said it till I'm blue in the teeth that it is not about where you were, because as us veterans know, we don't get to choose where we go.
Yeah.
I didn't get to choose to be a second wave ground troop at the beginning of a 20-year-long war. I didn't get to choose, that I was placed in log-based sites, Iraq, which was the size of 3 football fields, instead of one of the big tent cities that had hosted thousands and thousands of people. I didn't get to choose that, no more than, somebody that is in a much safer place. They didn't get to choose that. And so I am on a mission to make sure that veterans stop devaluing their role in what they did. But I see that generationally. She was in Vietnam. I was in, OIF too. And, we see that as a pattern so much. And just like what Patty said, she didn't read the book because she lived it. I have a collection of Iraqi books that I've only read a couple of them that were authored by battle buddies of mine. But other than that, no, I'm not going to watch the movies or anything that's post 9/11.
Yeah.
You lived it, yeah.
Yeah.
Martin, I want to make sure that listeners have a good summary, because we've gotten down into which has been great, rich content about the veteran stories and stuff. But it is, like you said, it's a hard elevator pitch at first on exactly what this event is. So can you give us the dates? Can you tell the different venues, the different dates, anything that, website, all that kind of stuff to make sure, because I want great attendance this year because it's such a moving event, and I want veterans to understand how they can get involved and all of that. So, and sponsors other than just us. If you want sponsors.
So the public-facing events, Friday night. So Friday all day is when the veterans will meet with the songwriters. The songwriters will learn their stories and write that song, which then they debut the next day. So this isn't something that they're going to go back and think about the song. This is done in some venues where they do this, they do it the same day. They write the song, and that night they're performing it. We give them a little extra time to do it. So Friday night is at Little Nashville. We'll have an event open to the public. Aaron Smith's going to play a little bit before it starts. And then
Aaron Smith's the owner of Little Nashville.
Yeah.
Also very talented himself.
He is.
Yeah,
He's worth watching.
Little Nashville's right on the square of Marion.
Yes,
so
another
a beautifully renovated space.
Yeah, another square
Music
downtown.
restaurant venue. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. And then afterwards, the songwriters will do what they call a songwriter in the round. They'll play 3 or 4 songs, about an hour or so of songs that they've done. They're all their original songs that they've written for other artists, which is another fantastic evening. It's free to the public. And then Saturday night is the concert, 6 o'clock in the square. It's free. Bring a lawn chair, bring a canned good, and come hear the songs debuted that night.
Will the Veterans Parade be tied in that weekend also?
So the Veterans on Parade is in the morning for a couple of hours in the morning, and they will end on the square. They'll use the same stage for their ending and their ceremony, which is also very moving. And there's a little bit of time to rest up before people come back to the
And do you have
square.
a website ready for details yet for next
We do.
year? Okay.
They can go to heroesunitedil.org. That's our website where it lists information about the event, time, dates, places. There's some forms to fill out if they just want to volunteer to help. If they'd like to apply to be part of the program as a veteran, we're taking applications for veterans for this year. All of you have a story, so don't say I don't have a story. And also there's a link to donate if they would like to just donate as well.
Multiple ways to support it.
Exactly.
Do you have dates for this year yet?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. September 5th and 6th.
Okay.
6th, Friday the 5th, September 5th, and Saturday, September 6th at 6 o'clock.
Great. So more information, as you mentioned, on your website, probably social media, as in the coming months.
Yeah, and they can see the songs from last year as well. They're going to hear Allison's song as part of this, but they could actually see the video and the other
three were amazing
The other
also.
three as well.
Yeah, it makes me want to have a Spotify playlist on our Banterra Spotify
Yeah.
page just for Freedom Sings, if that's
And
possible.
in addition to the veteran songs, the songwriters at these events you mentioned, they perform a little bit of their own songs that they've written, which is a
Right.
lot of fun. I was blown away by how talented performers they were when they started singing. It was like, whoa, these are real deal country singers.
Yeah.
There's some humor in some of the songs.
Yes.
There was one song in particular you mentioned. I think it was with Steve Dean wrote the Rodney Atkins song "Watching You," and so I was sitting there at the table. He started singing that song, and it's about a son watching his dad and imitating him, and I was just like, "Oh, this one's going to be a little bit hard to get through." So it was a very emotional night, but again, laughed, cried, sang along, toe tapped. So I encourage anyone out there, if you're interested in this, please support it in some way. Come out to it because you will enjoy it for sure.
Yeah, you might need Kleenex as a sponsor, you know.
I have a question for you, Martin. Do you have a geographical target area for veterans that you're wanting to apply? Do they necessarily need to be from Marion? Do they need to be from Southern Illinois? Tell me about that.
So our initial part would be Marion and surrounding areas, since City of Marion is the largest sponsor, but we also would entertain some other veterans who are from Southern Illinois who have a story. And if we only get to do 4, but there's an online program that they can do as well, and there's other opportunities. So even if someone may not fit that geographic area, still love to talk to them about it. They can shoot us an email.
Marion included, we're so Southern Illinois driven. I'm sure they'd be supportive of any great veteran story
Yeah.
that you can make work that's in the region. So, well, you guys, thank you so much I know this was a lot of information, but I really enjoyed it myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Thank you for your service,
Yes.
and thank you for joining us today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to Helping You Thrive on your favorite podcast platform or watch the video on Banterra's YouTube channel. Also, please tell others about our podcast by sharing on your social media or leaving us a review. Follow Banterra Bank's social media for various insights, including promotions and this podcast. Our podcast today was recorded at Marion Cultural and Civic Center in Marion, Illinois, and produced by Union Street Arts and Banterra's marketing department. You can find more information on Banterra at our website, banterra.bank. Thanks for joining us today. Banterra Bank, member FDIC.